9 buses carrying a single-day record-high number of migrants arrived in New York City on Sunday. At least 1,000 migrants have shown up in the city in the last 3 days. This weekend in Kansas, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis received a standing ovation from Republican voters when he talked about the southern border. Now, this, of course, follows his political stunt last week, chartering a plane to send a group of migrants unannounced to Martha's Vineyard from San Antonio. Joining us now is Republican Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne of Texas. Congresswoman, it is good to have you back. Thank you for coming on. Let me start here. I want your reaction to the latest call for a DOJ investigation into Governor DeSantis' flight. This is from State Rep Dylan Fernandez, who represents Martha's Vineyard. He says there are legal implications around fraud, kidnapping, deprivation of liberty, and human trafficking. Your thoughts?
I wish he was as sincere about his thoughts on sex trafficking and human trafficking as we've seen on the border. I wish he would get down there and actually, before claiming and being very proud of sanctuary cities, would be willing to come on the border and see what I have seen. This travesty of little girls who are given condoms by their families before trekking on a journey into Mexico, where they know that they're going to be raped repeatedly, where they've seen little girls and little boys who are basically owned by sex traffickers and sold into slavery once they get here. Or the travesty of knowing what it's like to be able to lose a son with the thousands of pounds of fentanyl that's coming over our borders. People like the Heismans in Dallas.
Let me say this. You are talking exclusively about crime here. These are people who are seeking asylum in the U.S. There is no evidence that anyone on any of these buses or anyone flown on these planes is someone who has committed any of the crimes you're discussing now. So these are asylum seekers. There's a difference.
I wasn't comparing anybody on the buses. What I'm saying is what's happening on their way here. You asked me how I felt about him comparing the governors who are sending people on air-conditioned flights into Martha's Vineyard at the end of their summer season to drug traffickers, to sex traffickers who are actually encouraging them to come into our border, where they actually are having atrocities. I would say the travesty is not what these governors are doing. I'd say the travesty is what the Biden administration is doing by encouraging that kind of a trek through Mexico and other South American cities where people are meeting those horrific ends.
The vice president literally said, "Do not come." So when you say that they are suggesting people come, they have said explicitly the opposite. But let me ask you about
well, there's a difference between what they're saying and what they're doing.
Let me ask you about why the governor are doing this. Abbott, Ducey, DeSantis are being criticized for performing these stunts and shows with people's lives, vulnerable lives. And if these governors are serious about burden sharing and sharing the responsibility, maybe they would do this in a different fashion. I want you to listen here to New York City Mayor Eric Adams.
We reached out and stated that let's coordinate and work together so we could deal with this crisis together. They refused to do so. I don't think it was politically expedient for them to coordinate. It was more to do this basic political showmanship.
And Congresswoman, I think people understand that Texas can't carry the burden of all of this. Maybe you share it across the country, but why not notify these cities and states? Why not coordinate this transfer?
Yeah. I would say that what we're seeing in the state of Texas, you've got the mayor of New York City, a city of over 8 million people, complaining about 1,000 people coming in and he wasn't notified. You've got the city of McAllen that had 11,000 people. The city is less than 200,000 people large. You had a city that size have to absorb 11,000 people in 1 week alone. Where's their notification? It's not just about notifying these people. The other issue is you finally have Democrats who have been saying that there is no border crisis, open borders, sanctuary cities are great. You finally have those Democrat mayors finally saying we do have a crisis, this is an emergency, this is a humanitarian crisis, and we need to address it.
That,
I think, was really the best result.
Border on the southern border. But should these governors notify the cities and states that they are sending these people and coordinate it? Specifically on that question, if I could get a direct answer.
Again, notifying them does what? The state
I'm
of
glad
Texas
you asked.
doesn't
I'm
get
glad you asked.
notifications, does not get notifications. You notify, when we get notified within the state of Texas, for example, I used to be the mayor of Irving, we would get
Yes.
notified. We didn't have the resources, we didn't have the housing, we didn't have the schools, we didn't have the health care. So getting a phone call that you have thousands of people headed your way does no good. What we really need to do is not give a phone call. What we really need to do is work on the policies under the last administration that we're working. Title 42, remain in Mexico, having customs and immigrations and customs enforcement be able to deport criminal illegal aliens. Those are all tools that were working under the last administration that systematically this administration has just torn through.
Title 42 was specifically for COVID, but you asked notifying does what? Notifying does no good. I know, Congresswoman, that you support notification because you are an original co-sponsor of House 6592, the Immigration Transparency and Transit Notification Act that would require the Secretary of Homeland Security or the Secretary of Health and Human Services to notify the relevant federal, state, and local officials of a jurisdiction at least 7 days before transporting a covered alien to such jurisdiction by airplane, motor vehicle, or other means. If you think it should be law that the federal government notifies the states, why shouldn't the states be required to notify cities that they're sending migrants? Is it politically just convenient to be against the Democratic administration and not require that of Republican governors?
I am for secure borders. I am for orderly immigration. I think what you're seeing in the state of Texas, again, is millions of people having crossed our border. We haven't gotten any notification. We didn't get a phone call. When we say it's a problem, the borders are open. You know, the borders aren't open. No, we have systematic immigration. Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't complain that you got people coming in and not being notified, at the same time arguing that your borders are closed. They're not.
Congresswoman,
we do have open borders. Every city now is seeing those results.
I hear you. Congresswoman, it seems that you are trying to have it both ways by saying that a Democratic administration should have to notify the states, but Republican governors should not have to notify these cities they're sending migrants to. Beth Van Dyne,
I'm saying
of Texas,
immigration is a federal issue. I'm saying the federal government needs to do that. It absolutely does. There's a lot we can do.
Thank you so much.